Welcome to my workshop and my YouTube channel, DIY Minded. I love watching shop tours. I love to see how people have things set up and organized, and I love to check out people's tools. So today I want to do a quick tour of my shop so people can see how I have things set up and the way they are currently, and also kind of talk through some of the plans I have for future improvements and changes in the shop. I'll start the tour with a quick around the room and then kind of go back and focus on some of the areas. This is a new workshop for me. We just moved into this house 5 months ago, so I haven't had a chance to build things in and get things set up yet. So starting back at the beginning, I have this pseudo lumber rack for sheet goods. Not really a lumber rack as much as it is a place where I stack them in the corner. Someday this will have a lumber rack, but at this point I haven't built something because where this rack here is with all of my portable toolboxes I use for installs and such, this will eventually be a dust collection system mounted here. Just to the right of the dust collection, I currently have a 4-foot by 8-foot cutting station that I use for breaking down sheet goods. I do a lot of work with veneered plywoods and such, so this has been incredibly helpful with my track saw. Located just above my cutting station is a Grizzly air filter. This has been great to pull the dust out of the air, especially when sanding. I have a door to my exterior, which is great. Look out and watch the kids playing. Next, I have the Delta mini lathe. I've been very pleased with this thus far. I don't do a lot of wood turning, but the stuff that I have done, I really enjoyed. I've done some small segmented bowls and some other things. I hope to turn pens. I have everything to do it, just haven't gotten around to it yet. Moving past that is a workbench in the corner. Currently has my slow speed grinder for sharpening lathe tools. Over here is the kids' workbench. The kids spend a lot of time in the shop here. That's the reason if you watch my videos, the large majority of my videos will be voiceovers. The reason for that is that the kids are in the shop almost all the time, and I want them to be able to talk freely and have conversations and not have to worry about whether I'm filming or not. Underneath my large window that looks out to my backyard, I have the Supermax 1938 drum sander. I have been very happy with this drum sander. I purchased it last year for a specific project, and it's one of those tools that I just think, where have you been all my life? I use it a lot. Next what you see, I have a Grizzly dust collector. Currently it's being used for the Supermax drum sander and the Grizzly bandsaw next to it. The dust collector eventually will go over by the door, like I mentioned earlier. There'll be pipes running around the top to each of the tool stations, and also one running underground to the table saw. Directly underneath my window is a clamp rack made by Rob over at Make Things and gifted to me. So thank you very much, Rob. I like it. If you've not had a chance to check out Rob over at Make Things, you should definitely do so. Next is my bandsaw. I have a Grizzly G0555. We have a interesting relationship. I wasn't a big fan when I started out with it. It did not work well. It did not cut straight. I had a lot of issues with it. And then come to find out, if you just put in a good blade, it makes all the difference in the world. So since I got the good blade for it, I've actually really loved the saw. It's my go-to for a lot of work around here. I did get the 6-inch extension, so that way I can cut full 12-inch logs to do resawing. In the corner is a relatively open space. I hope to have a CNC machine here, so Avid CNC or Inventables, if you're watching, call me. On the side wall over here, I have a large workbench. It's actually made from construction scraps from when our house was built last year. It's very temporary. I don't know exactly what I want here yet, so it's kind of a placeholder until I can really put my finger on exactly what I want to do with it. Currently houses the Grizzly benchtop drill press. This is a 12-speed model G7 943. It has worked well for me. It came as an optional floor or benchtop model. I went with the benchtop model so that I could have more flexibility on where I placed it. This rigid oscillating belt sander and spindle sander gets a lot of use in my shop. I see it in the background of a lot of YouTube videos, probably because you can't beat the price. For a miter saw, I'm using the Bosch GCM 12SD, which is the Axial Glide. I used to have a different brand miter saw, but it had the large guide rails out the back, which really meant it couldn't go anything less than a 36-inch workbench. Because of the Axial Glide, this miter saw can actually be mounted almost flush with the back wall. That would allow me to install this miter saw on the workbench as narrow as 24 inches. Under the long temporary workbench, I have these restaurant bus tubs that act as drawers. Here's where I store some miscellaneous smaller tools and such, but mostly I store small cutoffs of lumber. I am ridiculously frugal when it comes to the hardwoods, so anytime I have a small cutoff of hardwoods, it ends up in one of these bus tubs to be repurposed and used in smaller projects later. Directly above that is an entire wall of lumber racks. It's very poorly organized. In my mind, it would be much more organized, but on my top 100 things to do, it never seems to make it on the list. In the corner is something I really love having in my new shop, and that is a sink. I did not have a sink in any of my prior workshops, and this thing is fantastic. I use it multiple times every day. Anything from cleaning out paintbrushes to just washing hands. It's very helpful. Love it. Next to the sink is a rack for organizing hardware. I have bins on the top half, and then on the bottom the slide out trays to be able to house smaller parts. I can never seem to have enough hardware. I love the fact that when I need to build something, things are right there and I can just grab what I need. This rack is super simple. It's just a piece of scrap plywood on the wall with a shelf standard on it. And then the bins just hang right on there. Super easy. The cabinets on my walls actually came from my last workshop. They were a very simple plywood box construction. They have been incredibly useful. So when we tore down the shop at the last house, I brought them with me. I actually had them installed in this shop before we were living in the home. In the center of the shop is where my main workbench is, the table saw, and a joiner. This table saw has served me well for many years. It's probably looking for an upgrade sometime in the near future, but for now it does what I need it to do. In this center island, you can see right here is where that dust collection, I was able to run that through the floor and come up over by the corner where the dust collector will eventually sit. I have this jet 6-inch joiner here in the center island. I don't use it a lot, but I hope to soon, as I have a sawmill, so I now have access to a lot more rough sawn lumber. I know a big thing in woodworking shops, everybody likes to talk about their workbench or their assembly table. So I'll tell you about this workbench. This is actually 2 Harbor Freight workbenches sitting back to back. I bought these 5 years ago when we moved into our last house. I didn't have a workbench currently, and these were on a Black Friday sale, so I picked them up thinking they would be temporary and I would replace them soon. Well, here we are 5 years later and I still have them. One thing preventing me from building a new workbench is that I keep coming up with new ideas that I want incorporated in the workbench. I figure until those ideas kind of slow down, I probably shouldn't build the workbench. I use a DeWalt thickness planer. It's currently housed on this hydraulic cart. It allows me to roll it over to the workbench, jack it up to the right height, and use the workbench as an outfeed table. There might be plans for this in the future, but I'm not quite sure yet. It seems to work for me now, so we'll see. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I read them all, and I will respond as quickly as I can. I will put some links in the description to some of the equipment that I use and tools. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to ask.